Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody.
Hillary Clinton wants to abolish it, believe me. She wants to abolish our Second Amendment.
I think they didn't deny it. I don't think anybody denied it.
Other presidents did not call. They'd write letters, and some presidents didn't do anything.
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Hello and welcome to Fallacious Trump, the podcast where we use the insane ramblings of a man who collects indictments like ex-wives to explain logical fallacies. I'm your host, Jim.
And I'm your other host, Mark. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that results in bad or invalid arguments, and the logical fallacy we're looking at this week is the nutpicking fallacy. I think it's the first fallacy that uses an outrageous pun.
Yeah, probably. And interestingly, apart from the ones that we made up / identified ourselves, this is one of the only ones which we can point to exactly who came up with it and when, the day it was coined.
Wow.
Which was August 11th, 2006, which is almost exactly 17 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
It was a journalist called Kevin Drum, who's written for Mother Jones, among others.
Yeah.
He said that he wanted to come up with a way of describing that kind of annoying thing that people do where they trawl through comment threads to find a mad person as evidence that people who disagree with them are mad.
Yeah.
And so he had a little kind of competition among his readers to come up with a name for this. And the winner was a person whose screen name was Blue Man, and he came up with Nutpicking, which is...
Brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant.
It's nitpicking. It's also a negative version of cherry picking, because what you're doing is you're choosing out of all of the people who disagree with you a nutter. You're choosing an extreme example of your opposition or an extreme view that is probably not reasonably held by large numbers of the people who disagree with you.
Yeah.
And then you are representing that as typical of those people.
Yeah, in order to characterise all of the people that disagree with you as nutters.
Yes.
And nothing but nutters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the kinds of crazy things they say.
Yeah. And because they share the, like Piers Corbyn, who did crazy shit and was brought up in the newspaper, mainly the Mail, and the Telegraph, to say, look at the crazy shit this guy does, and he's Jeremy Corbyn's brother. So they're all exactly like that. And I think the last one he got featured in the newspaper for was going to the card-only self-checkout machine and demanding that he could use loose change. So that's nutty behaviour.
Completely pointless as well.
Yeah.
Just to score a win over the minimum wage staff at an Aldi.
And in the process, they pointed out the fact that he was a Corbyn. And that's it, job done. It's that kind of, it's the equivalent of the right-wing press just going, George Soros. Yeah.
Yeah, so our first example is a Facebook ad from Trump, or the Trump Make America Great Again Committee, at least, which reads, Democrats have finally admitted what they have truly wanted all along, to repeal the Second Amendment. Tell Robert Francis O'Rourke and the Democrats, we will never let you confiscate our guns. So that's not true.
Right.
Democrats as a whole have not talked seriously about repealing the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
That is not to say that no people who identify as Democrats think that should happen.
Yeah.
Beto O'Rourke, who they deliberately call Robert Francis O'Rourke to take away from the Hispanic cachet that Beto has in that running for Texas governor thing, where that slightly maybe helps him. Yeah. But also saying that essentially he wants to repeal the Second Amendment. He doesn't want to repeal the Second Amendment. No. He has said he wants to take away assault rifles, AR-15s, AK-47s. He says he doesn't believe any civilian should own an AR-15 or an AK-47. He goes into some detail on his website about the fact that he wants to repeal permitless carry and close private sale background check loopholes that mean that people don't have to get background checks if they buy it from someone who isn't a gun dealer, stronger domestic violence reporting laws, red flag laws, those kinds of things. He believes in quite strong but common sense gun safety measures. Yeah. Not at all repealing the Second Amendment.
And yet they, a bit like Piers Corbyn, so they're inventing the nuttiness and then saying, this is the example of what all Democrats are like.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of a straw man, this, and nutpicking, because they're claiming that Beto thinks this stuff. Yeah. In a way, I mean, they don't specifically directly claim he says it, but it's very much implied by the ad, I think. When they were asked about this by fact checkers, they pointed to a few state representatives, not US Congress people or senators who've suggested this, but local state representatives who are Democrats, like New Hampshire State Representative Catherine Rogers, who didn't also call for repealing the Second Amendment, but said it's time to revisit and look at our Constitution after former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens wrote a New York Times op-ed that called for repealing the Second Amendment. So after that, she said, I think having this discussion is good. Maybe the op-ed by Justice Stevens can lead to interesting discussion. It's a thing we should be talking about. Which is a very milquetoast version of trying to repeal the Second Amendment and taking your guns away. It's like, this is interesting things that we should think about.
Well, there's like in our opening titles, there's Trump saying she wants to, do away with the Second Amendment. And Hillary never said that. She said, well, maybe it's time to have after the umpteenth multiple school killing, that maybe it's time we looked at this again a bit more in a more nuanced way to prevent this kind of thing happening. Whereas if the Democrats, and I don't know that they've said it, was certainly not in print on the Facebook ad, if the Democrats said vote Republican and get mass murder, continue the school killings, that's what you'll get.
I wouldn't be surprised if people have said things like that, especially immediately after school shootings.
There you go.
Because of that is what's happening. If a vote for Democrats is a vote for this kind of thing to keep happening. Vote for Republicans, rather, is a vote for this kind of thing to keep happening. So, I'm sure that kind of thing has been said. And not necessarily by nuts. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
So our second example from Trump is a specific case of violence by an illegal immigrant. And this was something he brought up multiple times.
An illegal immigrant should have never, ever been here. Kate, as you remember from San Francisco, shot viciously by somebody that was sent out of the country 5 times and will probably get off. I see the lawyer and they're saying, oh, maybe it wasn't him. And it's terrible. It'll go on for years and years and years. What happened to Kate and so many others. And we're going to have a country where we can be free to walk around and free to walk the streets and free to look at the beautiful Golden Gate Bridge with your father, like Kate was doing, and then shot from nowhere. We're going to have a country that's going to be safe again.
So he is trying to use this one case, and there are others. There are other individual cases of violence perpetrated by immigrants, to say immigrants are bad, illegal immigration is dangerous, and we're all in danger if it continues. The only way we can be safe is to crack down on immigration, essentially. Yeah. And obviously that's mad. And when he said this guy will probably get off, he didn't exactly get off, because he was found guilty for being a felon in possession of a firearm, because as he correctly said, the person who was responsible for this shooting, or who was holding the gun at the time at least, Jose Inez Garcia Zarate, it was a person who had been ejected from the US 5 times. He had drug-based prosecutions, so he's a felon, and he was found not guilty of first-degree murder. Actually, the first-degree murder charge was dropped, second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter, because it was an accident.
Yeah, didn't we covered this one before?
Yeah, he talked about it at one of his State of the Union addresses. Yeah, and when it came up there, we talked about it.
Yes, it was an accident. It was a ricochet or something. Yeah,
that's right. It ricocheted off concrete. And I know this isn't important, but she wasn't looking at the Golden Gate Bridge. Right. Because he can't be accurate, even when he's lying about other stuff. It was on Pier 14 in San Francisco, which is 5 miles away from the Golden Gate Bridge, facing in the other direction. It's not It's not a thing. But yeah, the point is this guy claimed that he found the gun wrapped in a T-shirt or some cloth and it went off. Both sides agreed, prosecution and defence, that he hadn't shot her. It had ricocheted off concrete kind of quite close to him. She was something like 80 to 100 feet away from her, and it ricocheted off the concrete within 15 feet of him. So it was kind of just a freak accident, essentially.
Yeah. No, he didn't shoot her viciously.
No, exactly.
No.
And again, that's not to say that there aren't instances where immigrants have killed people, deliberately, murdered people.
Yeah.
That's true. That can then not be translated into immigrants are bad and violent and dangerous and we need to be afraid of them and we need to stop them from being here because we're all going to die.
And what we need to do is build a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And rather than bring about some sort of gun control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy thought.
Yeah. Because that way, that's chipping away at the Constitution. That's the Second Amendment gone. Yeah, what's to stop them getting rid of all of them?
Yeah. But even if he'd managed to successfully pick a case where it was a nut, a bad, violent criminal, that is not representative of that whole class of people.
Yeah.
So, third example is Trump's former campaign manager and social media guy, Brad Parscale, who was talking about Michelle Wolf. Michelle Wolf did the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I think the first year Trump was in office, and therefore became a hated person on the right.
Yeah.
I think she made a remark about Sarah Huckabee Sanders' eye makeup or something like that, and it was like, how can they be so mean about women? And she did a Netflix special in which she did some jokey audience polls. One of them, she asked her audience, are you sort of hoping we don't get peace with North Korea so you won't have to give Trump credit?
Pretty good. That's quite funny.
Yeah. And it's clearly a joke. Mm-hmm. And her audience took it in the clearly a joke spirit and voted 71% in favour of, hoping we don't get peace with North Korea.
That. Yeah. So we don't have to give him credit. Yeah.
And so Brad Parscale took this and said, here is the media and left's position in a nutshell. It isn't about America. So he was essentially saying, this is what Democrats want, is nuclear war.
In order to spite Trump. Yeah.
So he's taking an extreme comic view, not even a realistic view that anyone actually holds, but a joke, taking it as a real view and then suggesting it's typical of Democrats, suggesting that is what we want. This is the future Democrats want. Paul Joseph Watson, who goes by Prison Planet, who is an InfoWars contributor, also picked this up. He relayed what had happened and then said, in other words, a significant majority of leftists would happily risk nuclear war so long as it meant Trump would look bad.
Wow. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And it isn't us nutpicking to say that this is one example of the right not doing funny.
No.
Just don't get humour.
In fact, finally in this section, I have, I think possibly for the first time, a Democrat example. An example of someone on the left doing this thing.
Yeah.
Kind of. And it's to make a point similar to what you just said, because this is an extract from one of Jordan Klepper's videos. He was a contributor to The Daily Show, and he regularly goes to Trump rallies. He went to January 6th and various other things to talk to Trump supporters and find out what they think about things. And here's one example.
What don't we know about 9/11?
I think it was all planned. I think that it came down on their explosives.
It was an inside job.
Yes, I think so. But I think Bush knew it was happening.
Really? Is Biden just wasting time there?
Biden doesn't know what he's doing.
He recently just killed the head of Al-Qaeda.
I don't believe it.
Do you think that's just a made-up news story?
Just like bin Laden with Obama.
Clarify who's still alive. Bin Laden?
JFK Jr. is.
JFK Jr. still alive.
JFK Jr. is still alive?
Yeah.
So,
I think JFK Jr. is going to try and expose globalists because they killed his father.
I thought he was a magazine magnate who lived in New York.
Yeah, I don't think so.
What do you think of the state of education in America? Could we be doing better?
We absolutely could be doing better.
These kids could grow up and they could go on to believe crazy things.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They did.
So brilliant. That sleight of hand right at the end is so good, isn't it?
He is brilliant. And the Good Liars do a very similar thing. They go and talk to people and kind of try and use that way of asking them questions that are going to lead them down one route and then taking it back on them in a very similar way. It's obviously for entertainment. Yeah. But it's also exposing what these people really think. And the selective editing, where they're obviously going to pick the craziest, funniest ones, is a form of nutpicking. Yeah. And the reason I wanted to play this particularly was because, first of all, it shows how this kind of tactic really feeds into your confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. Because it's easy for us to think, well, that's just what Trump supporters are like. They're all fucking idiots who think mad things. Yeah. And this supports that absolutely. Every time we see one of Jordan Klepper's or the Good Liars videos, or, you know, anyone who interviews a Trump supporter pretty much ever feeds into that narrative and makes us think, well, I'm right about the fact that they're all idiots. It also shows, I think, that it is very difficult to tell whether nutpicking is going on when you think that a reasonable number of the people who it's sampling from might be nuts. Right. Right. Because I'm pretty sure that when Jordan goes to these places and asks lots of people, he probably finds a lot of people who don't say anything mad. I could be wrong, because you have to believe some mad things to still support Trump, I think. So maybe this is representative, and it's hard to tell because we don't know what the sample is like. What we're seeing is the end result, and it's probably not picked. Yeah,
because I think it would be, how would that be as a televisual experience if he interviewed 30 people, I don't know, 300 people out of how you would have to know what the sample size is. And if all 300 of them came back with nutty stuff, that would actually be slightly too much. It would be a bit boring. It would be a bit kind of not good telly. Yeah. So one or two of them is funny, but if you took the whole hour of the show to just play, I reckon I could
watch an hour of Jordan Klepper doing this, and it'd be extremely entertaining. I don't think it'd be a problem. But it's the difficulty is, of course, that where you are doing what the journalist who came up with this, Kevin Drum, talked about, looking through kind of comment sections, you are looking at nobodies. You are looking at people who aren't important in that world. Just like these Trump supporters, Trump doesn't care who they are. They mean nothing. The problem is that in several cases, the kinds of things they say are also exactly what is being said by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is absolutely a nut. Yeah. But she's also the deputy leader of the House. Yeah. And therefore isn't an extreme example of the Republican Party at the moment, but representative of at least a significant and powerful group of that party. Powerful enough to make sure whether Kevin McCarthy gets power or not, essentially. Yeah,
exactly. And she got elected so she is representative of a whole bunch of people who elected her on the nut job ticket. Yeah.
And it's very much not just MTG either. It's, Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massey, Paul Gosar, Matt Gaetz. There's a lot of them that are very nutty, express things that are exactly the kinds of things you hear from those Jordan Klepper videos, and the kinds of things that charitably we might think are feeding into our confirmation bias. But it is when you see them. I mean, look at Trump himself. He has said, well, no one's really got to the bottom of 9/11. Which is what kind of prompted Klepper to ask these ladies this question. Yeah. So he is not only feeding their conspiracy theory thinking, but expressing it himself as the presumptive presidential nominee for their party. So I think nutpicking is something which you should be careful of, but the care should not make you stop saying, look at these nuts and the things they say, because some of them are actually elected representatives.
And Now is the time, I think, for Mark's British politics. Corner.
I immediately went to somebody that has been typified as a nut job and therefore been very useful on the right to be able to dismiss the entirety of the left's economic stewardship thinking. And so, in a way, what we can witness this week is the creation of a nutpicking going on. And so it starts in May 2017 and actually all the clips are from LBC Radio this week. On LBC, there was an interview about the paying for the Labour policy was to bring in new policemen, unlike the Tory policy, which was to do away with 10,000 policemen. The then Shadow Home Secretary, Diane Abbott, was talking about this and how it would be funded, and she cocks it up big time.
So how much would 10,000 police officers cost?
Well, if we recruit the 10,000 police men and women over a 4-year period, we believe it'll be about £300,000.
£300,000?
Sorry,
10,000 police officers? What are you paying them?
No, I mean, sorry.
How much will they cost?
It will cost about £80 million.
About £80 million?
Yeah.
If you divide 80 million by 10,000, you get 8,000. Is that what you're going to pay these policemen and women?
No, we're talking about a process over 4 years.
80 million divided by 10,000 equals 8,000. So what are these police officers going to be paid?
You would be forgiven for thinking that she's a bit of a nut, but insofar as she's gone into an interview to talk about this new policy of coming up with, actually they were going to divert money from capital gains tax. There was to be a capital gains tax break promoted by the Tory party, fundamentally to give rich people a tax break. And the Labour policy was to say, we're going to reverse that and use the money to fund 10,000 new policemen. There's a shortage of 10,000 policemen. Yeah. We're going to use that. In the same interview, Nick Ferrari, the interviewer, points out the fact that Labour had also said that they're going to use this same money to pay for various other things. And the real figure they should have said is 300 million. It would cost 300 million.
Yeah.
I
think what she was doing was very clever psychological anchoring technique, where initially said it would cost 300,000. You see.
Yeah.
Everyone was thinking, that's very reasonable for to get 10,000 new policemen just cost 300,000, and potentially new policemen were thinking, I don't think I'd do it for 30 quid.
Yeah.
And then when she said it was 80 million. All of those potential policemen were like, oh, 8,000, that's a lot more than 30 quid.
Yeah.
That I might consider. You see? She's getting policemen cheap.
Yeah. Very good. But I tell you, I don't think she'd worked out any of those numbers until Nick Ferrari pointed out.
Off the top of her head, and not even quickly off the top of her head. Yes, it took her a while to come up with a shit wrong number.
Yes, I know. I know. She's hastily looking around at people.
She just said £1 billion, quickly, that would have been somehow better.
Yeah.
It was like,
yes, quite. $1 billion. Yeah, no, that sounds all right. That sounds about
you've
right.
clearly thought about it because you had that. You were right there with the answer. Whereas previously, the thing you came up with, it took you a while. You'd clearly never considered the cost.
Even thought about the cost of this. How much is that going to cost?
That's a bag of sweets each.
Like if some of them could share.
Yeah.
That's right,
We've got bunk beds in the back. Split there, it'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. So anyway, the Tories jumped on this nut job misspeaking as an indication of Labour's entire alleged poor showing with the economy. The then Tory Home Secretary, so her opposite number, Amber Rudd, tars the whole of Corbyn's Labour Party with the same nut brush and said Diane Abbott has laid bare the chaos that Britain would face if Jeremy Corbyn is voted into Downing Street. One of Corbyn's closest allies has clearly shown that Labour's sums don't add up. They would weaken our defences, and their nonsensical promises aren't worth the paper they're printed on. So they jumped on it and said, aha, here's somebody that's cocked up something or other, hasn't read the brief, done it completely wrong, and they've extrapolated from that and spread it across the entirety of the Labour Party, such that they would weaken our defences. And their nonsensical promises.
I'm pretty sure those promises hadn't been written down anywhere. They just had been whispered to Diane Abbott on the way in.
Exactly. They're clearly not been written down because either that, though, they had been written on paper that wasn't worth anything, and it had fallen apart in her hands. Yeah. So, but by contrast, here is in April 2020, the then Home Secretary, Priti Patel, after Amber Rudd had resigned over the Windrush scandal, Home Secretary Priti Patel cocks up the numbers of people tested for COVID.
I can report, through the government's ongoing monitoring and testing programme, that as of 9 a.m. today, there have been 974,000 tests carried out across the UK, excluding Northern Ireland.
I mean, we did quite a lot of jokes about the Shadow Home Secretary, who wasn't very good on numbers in terms of the police. But, I mean, Priti Patel, she's in a league of her own. You've got to give it to the Tories.
So that was Ian Hislop there at the end, noticing on Have I Got News For You at the time, that she was cocking up the numbers, and yet there was no commensurate nut-picking. Nobody in the press picked that nutty thing and then said, well, this is the entirety of the Tory party COVID thing is unravelling.
I mean, at least the numbers that Diane Abbott came up with actually existed as real numbers.
Yes, exactly. Rather than 3,034,974,000. Even when you write it down, you think, that doesn't
it's
even
two separate numbers.
Come out as millions or anything, does it? No.
300,000 and 974,000.
No, it's not. I mean, what, you're supposed to add them up or what? or is it 300 million? Well, it can't be 300 million because there aren't that many people.
It would be 300
UK.
billion if you put them all together.
Exactly. Yeah, 300 billion, 34,970. No, 34,974,000, which is more than the population of the planet.
By some way.
Some way.
Yeah.
Divided by 10,000. That's how much are you paying them? 30 quid? Yeah.
Each police officer gets 1 million COVID tests.
Exactly, yeah. So several people on then named Twitter said, any news in the papers about Priti Patel galactically screwing up the numbers? Just say, the way that Diane Abbott was mercilessly pilloried by the press? No. And somebody said, of course not. This wasn't any old lefty screw-up. This was a conservative home-style screw-up, and therefore to be brushed under the carpet as soon as possible. So our second example, in April 2023, again on LBC, there was a discussion show about Labour and Tory prospects for the 2024 election. And Nick Gibb, Tory Minister of State for Schools, characterises again Labour's not to be trusted with the economy. And listen out for the presenter of the show, Ian Dale, countering the fallacy.
I just think if the Labour Party lose the election, they've got to look at how they manage economies, because their history, throughout the history of the Labour Party, is the damage they do to the British economy.
Under the Blair government, the economy was well managed. The financial crash came along. Gordon Brown was seen by everybody outside this country as almost the saviour of the world economy. It doesn't really fit into your narrative.
There was the banking crash, of course, but also the way they had spent during that period meant that when we came into office in 2010, we had a budget deficit, an annual budget deficit of £156 billion.
What is it now?
It's
a lot more.
We have been through the COVID crisis and we're trying to deal with that.
So there's Nick Gibb using that same received nut job opinion that Diane Abbott didn't do any favours for the Labour Party in generating, and he's applying it. And so you need to look at your ability to manage the economy. And if you look at the history of the economy from Tory, with a handover from Tory party to the Labour Party always receive a much larger deficit than the Tories receive after each administration change, and then they spend the time trying to fix it. When Ian Dale asked what's the deficit under the Tories right now, the UK general government gross deficit was 2,537 billion in the first quarter of 2023, so January to March. So at the time of this, it was 2,537 billion.
So
compared
like
with
15 times the...
compared with the 156 billion that he quotes as having inherited from Labour. And then it says, oh yeah, but we've had COVID and also countless corrupt deals somewhere, do you think? Anyway, in the next bit, Gibb, I think, does what Priti Patel did, in that he becomes the nut. If they got any sense at all, then there ought to be nut picking going on right here at Gibbs' expense. When he tries to explain how good the Tories are at marshalling the economy. See, they're much better, and he gives all these examples and yet gets shot down at each turn.
We borrowed £450 billion, and the capital markets were confident enough to lend us £450 billion, and they know they're going to get it back.
They weren't after Truss's budget in September, they were.
Well, I'm not saying that was a great try, but what I am saying is that Rishi Sunak is there, Jeremy Hunt is there, they're stabilising the economy. We did have the fastest growth in the G7 in 2021
you don't now.
And 2022.
We've got the lowest now.
No, but we will recover. All the hallmarks, all the fundamentals are there in place. We've got low unemployment. We've got inflation coming down. We've got a competent government.
Inflation went up last month.
Yes, but it's forecast by the OBR to be 2.9% in the fourth quarter of this year.
Do you seriously believe that's going to happen?
I do, provided, of course, we don't give in to pay settlements where people are demanding 35% pay increases. Of course, that would blow inflation apart.
No matter how much the Tories tank the economy, their ongoing marketing campaign that one Labour nut, Corbyn or Abbott, or just the nut of socialist tax and spend, and which sometimes gets translated to the magic money tree, that equals mismanagement, and that Corbyn equals mismanagement, or the Labour Party equals the mismanagement of the economy, seems to be able to break through. Note that he also promotes the Tory mantra that wage rises would cause inflation, tarring those nutters in education, rail, health, fire and police service who want to be paid will bust the economy.
Yeah, they're just saying every time, the economy is incredibly bad at the moment, but imagine how much worse it'd be if we paid people fairly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and Sunak did exactly the same thing only 5 days ago, talking about the fact that junior doctors have not accepted the pay offer that other unions have. So, and it's all the vilification that Mick Lynch, that was levied at Mick Lynch. And like that other nut job, Mick Lynch, Corbyn disagrees.
I wonder which planet you're on at the moment, mate. I really do. Inflation well over 12%, food inflation much more, and you cannot say that wages have caused this inflation because wages have actually fallen over the last 10 years. And if you actually got round the table with all the unions involved in the current disputes and paid them properly, you would actually have more money being spent in the economy, which would help investment anyway, and you would have a lot less poverty around and a lot less people claiming universal credit or top-ups in order to get through.
Which is for the Tory who paint the whole of the Labour Party with the crazy nutness of Corbyn, and Corbyn, who's the kernel at the centre of that nutness, quite a reasonable sounding bloke who said, well, yeah, you know, if you paid more people, they would be able to spend more and the economy would grow, wouldn't it? It's not, you know, but that's too outrageous. Everybody loves a nut. The whole world loves a weirdo. Brains are in a rut, but everybody loves a nut. There was a Prime Minister named Rishi who kept dead Brexit in his house And everybody said to Rishi, how come you keep banging on Brexit in your house? He said, well, everybody loves a nut. The whole world runs off fallacies. Brains are in a rut, but the wild fallacies are not. Everybody loves a nut. The whole world runs off fallacies. Brains are in a rut, but the wild fallacies are not. The wild fallacies are not. Johnny Cash there with his classic from 1966, Everyone Loves a Nut.
So in the Fallacy in the Wild, we like to talk about the fallacy of the week from a non-political perspective, and our first example this week comes from The Little Mermaid.
Aha!
And this is the remake, the more recent...
The non-heretical live-action remake.
It's fine. Yeah. It's just kind of unnecessary. Yeah. I mean, as are all the Disney live-action remakes, really.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
It just gives you a chance to go, oh, yeah, how are they going to do that with CGI? And they go, that's how
they're going to make Flounder this weird, horrifying thing, like the early versions of Sonic the Hedgehog, that just makes you want to go, what's that? But,
yeah. And use the technology from Aquaman.
Yeah.
They'll just use that.
Yeah.
And, they need to make a remake of that and just CGI out Amber Heard.
Yeah.
That would be good. Yeah.
But we played a clip from The Little Mermaid a few episodes ago.
We did.
And this is obviously a different version, but kind of a little bit earlier on, leading into Triton finding out about Ariel meeting a human.
Do these humans have any idea how much damage their shipwrecks do?
I don't think they intended to have a shipwreck.
They are careless, Ariel. It will take thousands of years for this coral to grow back.
And they've killed nearly all of the sea fern.
They'd kill us too if they had the chance.
No, they're not all like that.
Oh? How would you know? You've never even seen one. You were just a child when Mother died and Father stopped us going to the surface.
I just mean we're not all the same, so why should humans be?
What about humans?
I just meant...
Look at what their shipwreck did.
They got what they deserved. They're the most dangerous species of all.
So, as with the other version, Triton's not that bothered if humans die. And he has indoctrinated his children in this view because a human killed his wife. And that one human, who was no doubt a little bit violent and anti-mermaid, Ariel is arguing should not be assumed to represent all humans.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And so her sisters have kind of listened to Triton and saying, these humans, they don't care about having shipwrecks, they're careless and they're dangerous and they'll do bad things.
Has anybody pointed out in their family that despite the fact that they are all apparently from the same mother and father, that they are different colours, got different accents, obviously completely different nationalities. Above the surface, they would be utterly different nationalities, and yet they're all Triton's kids?
Well, here's the thing. Yes, that has come up.
Right.
In fact, my daughter, when she went to see this with her friends, although her friends are like in their teens and generally very accepting of diversity and kind of applauding of that kind of stuff, said this feels a bit forced.
Yeah.
However, much like the people who argued that in science mermaids wouldn't have dark skin because they're under the water.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna argue a real world basis for their different nationalities. It's because the seven daughters of Triton represent the seven seas. They represent different areas of the planet.
There you go. Yes.
That's, I think.
Yeah.
I haven't read a thing that says that that's why they're like that, but that is I think why
in mythology,
they are different races in this.
One of them is clearly from the Irish Sea.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that was one of the
one of the seven seas.
The oceans.
Yeah. There's 5 oceans.
Seas of the world.
7 seas. Yeah. I don't know quite how that works.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
There we go. Yeah.
Perfectly cromulent.
Oh,
not an issue at all. So,
nothing that Triton's wife took issue with at any point.
No. So, our second example comes from the excellent Vietnam drama Tour of Duty.
Oh, yeah.
And this is an episode where Michael Madsen guest stars as a sniper who is perhaps enjoying his work a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And the war correspondent, Alex, decides that she's going to write a story about him.
Why do a story on snipers?
A sniper is a perfect example of the effect of this war on the individual.
Pretty extreme example.
Yeah, but it brings some crucial points out. I mean, for example, it's tough enough for the average soldier to go back home and deal with everything that's going on back in the States. Here's a man who's killed 39 people.
I know better than to suspect you of going for the sensational.
The truth is often sensational over here. And I hear he's taken a finger off of every one of his kills.
So Alex is making the argument that war is sensational.
Right.
But even within that, this guy doesn't represent soldiers. He doesn't represent the effect that the war, that Vietnam is having on American soldiers. He is a special case, an extreme case.
Yeah.
And that plays out in the episode. But her deciding that this is a good angle to write an article about the effect of the war on Americans is a bit nutpicky.
It feels a bit like that's the Dennis Hopper. She's the Dennis Hopper journalist, kind of, who's just sort of goes for the extreme stuff. And she's going to get her head thrown into the lap of Martin Sheen. And where does he keep the fingers if he's
got a bag that he keeps on his belt. He's got like a drawstring bag.
Right.
Yeah.
With 39 fingers
Apparently.
in it. Yeah. Colonel Kurtz would be proud, wouldn't he? All those little fingers hacked off. Yeah, because that's a very typical American soldiers from Vietnam's reaction. So, yeah, I can see her point when she's saying, yeah, do you think that's a little bit extreme? Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, the other character was the kind of the medic, the psychiatrist of the show.
Right.
So she was kind of maybe pushing back a little bit and saying, is this a good idea? Who, incidentally, was played by Steven Soderbergh's wife.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway, our last example is from Law & Order Special Victims Unit. And this is a case where Benson and Stabler are after a group of rich kind of college kids who are accused of rape and murder.
Gotta come home sometime.
Not if one of his friends tipped him off.
These are not the kind of guys that would go out on a limb for each other.
You got a point. What do you think it is, the money?
Not all rich kids are like this.
Yeah, but these are trust fund babies, everything handed to them. No character, no conscience.
You're either born with a conscience or you're not.
Oh, no. It's all about how you're raised.
So Stabler is kind of tarring all rich kids, all trust fund kids, with the same brush as these ones who are clearly violent and dangerous.
And sneaking in a nature versus nurture argument as well.
Olivia's having a go at kind of saying, well, not all rich hashtag not all rich kids. And that when the thing is, the way I look for examples of fallacies generally is I kind of try and figure out some typical wording of how people express them. But for this, it was pretty difficult to do that because the way that you express that a particular person is typical of a group when they're not isn't necessarily phrased in a common way. So I ended up looking for ways that people might answer that. And one of them is, well, not all of them are like that.
Yeah.
Which made me think of the kind of not all men thing.
Yeah.
So there are times, I think, when pointing out that not all members of a group are like the person is saying might be a good counter to this fallacy being expressed. There are other times, like with not all men, where you should just shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. And the kind of counters that we encountered in the Nick Gibb thing is neatly done by all of the other panel members who just counter each and every example.
Yeah. If you have the facts that disagree with what the person is saying, that's great. If you have data.
Yeah.
But it is reasonable in some cases, at least, to be able to say, if someone is suggesting, look at this example, look at this extreme example, to say, well, that's an extreme example, that's not typical.
Or just to say, well, that's not true, don't you? Yeah.
If only that worked. Yeah. So before we move on to fake news this week, I just want to talk a little bit about a new plan that we haven't done before, which is to redo a few of the earlier fallacies we visited way back kind of 5 years ago now when we started.
Yeah.
And the reasons are manifold.
Among them, in British politics, we've had 17
Yeah,
changes
a
of
lot's gone on
leaders since then.
over the
A
last
lot's
5 years.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's lots more
the
examples.
aren't so, and they're not so, well, also, that's the kind of terrifying thing, is that not only are the examples now somewhat dated because they involve people who were leaders of the Tory party several dozen leaders ago, but the other terrifying is that there are still these fallacies are still being employed.
Yeah, people are still doing this, so there's more examples that have come up in the meantime. There's also the fact that we've got better at doing this, I think. I mean, the fact that you're listening probably means you agree, but I've gone back and listened to one of our early ones, and it's that's not great. It's not great. So and possibly have different views on some of the things that we talked about over that time.
The other
our
thing,
views have evolved, and we've got better at evaluating this stuff. We've learned more about fallacies and how they're used.
So it would be interesting to go back and see whether the examples that we used are kind of right, because at the end of each episode we say, if you think we've used a fallacy ourselves, and some of these, reviewing the old episodes, we kind of think, maybe
was that a great argument that I made?
That's right. Yeah.
And also, a couple more reasons. One is that obviously part of our show is topical. We talk about news and what's going on at the time. So anyone who is wanting to learn about some of our early ones, like the genetic fallacy, the straw man, slippery slope, and so on, the topical stuff they're getting is now 5 years out of date. So it'd be nice to have more up-to-date versions of that. And also, there's the fact that some people, I can't imagine why, some people who listen haven't necessarily downloaded our entire back catalogue and listened to all of them.
What on earth?
They're crazy
really?
if they don't.
They are crazy.
Yeah.
They are.
But
let's hope they're not representative of their entire listenership.
Absolutely. They'd be outliers, definitely. Extreme examples of our listeners.
Yeah.
But what that means is they're missing out on some of the more common fallacies, because when we started out, we were doing some of the ones that come up a lot.
Yeah.
So for that reason, every now and again, it's probably going to be like every 10 episodes or so, starting next episode, we're going to go back and do a new version of a fallacy we've already talked about years ago. Hopefully that'll still be interesting for you to listen to. So the next one will be the genetic fallacy, which was the first one we did. The reason we wanted to say it basically was so that when you see genetic fallacy come up in your feed next time, you don't think, I've listened to that episode, or they've done that one. That must be a replay. It's not a replay. We're having another go at it.
So perhaps we should put brackets redux.
Yeah, like Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna play fake news, folks. I love the game. It's a great game. I understand the game as well as anybody.
Yes, it's fake news, the game where I read out 3 Trump quotes, 2 of which are real and 1 I made up, and Mark has to figure out which one is fake news.
You see, what's been happening is that the one time I didn't get it right, that's because, that's become the characterisation of our entire listenership, who are all trying, as individuals, to each do their very best to succeed in their own particular ways. And your sweeping judgment of their failure based on the one time I may have misspoken about the numbers is grossly unfair. And frankly, it taints them all.
Fair enough.
So, quite.
Yeah.
Bear that in mind.
So, our examples this week come from the speech that Trump gave recently in South Carolina, since he was arraigned for the 3rd time.
Umpteenth.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out whether the time when he went in to plead not guilty to the charges in the superseding indictment counted as an arraignment. I don't think it does, so it's still only 3 arraignments, I think.
Right.
Anyway, he talked to the crowd. He did a mixture of new stuff and old hits, and he said, "Look at this crowd. What an amazing... They won't show this, the horrible, horrible fake news. They never show the support. I think they've actually gotten worse. I used to think they were just bad people who were greedy and corrupt, but I actually think I'm going to get in trouble for even saying this, but it's almost like a conspiracy where they'll do whatever they can to stop me getting elected again."
Mm-hmm.
Statement number 2.
Yeah.
Every poll, we're kicking Biden's ass, and that's the problem. And if I wasn't, we wouldn't be under investigation by deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged human being. You take a look at that face, you say, that guy is a sick man. There's something wrong with him. Somebody said, why don't you be nice to him? I said it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. This guy's a maniac.
I haven't heard maniac for a long time. That's excellent. Okay.
And statement number 3.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Mexico. They gave us 28,000 soldiers. Everybody said, oh, you didn't get money for the wall. I said, yes, I did. No, you didn't get money. I said, no, we built the wall. We built almost 500 miles. We got money. What do you mean we didn't get money? They gave us 28,000 soldiers free of charge. 28,000. That's more than giving us a couple of bucks for a wall. They guarded our border for a long time. 28,000.
Okay. Now, not to denigrate your creativity, but I just wonder whether sticking 28,000 in many, many, many times is that more Trump than Jim? Yeah. So and see, I'm almost put off by, I'm swerving because I think it's a lure to the bad people who are greedy and corrupt, because that's he talking about what he's like, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this conspiracy. There's a bit of a lure going on there. Kicking Biden's arse. Sick man. Something wrong with him. Deranged, sick maniac. Is he going to say maniac? Okay, so on that basis, okay, I think number 1 is the one that you made up.
Okay, and of the other 2, which are you more convinced by?
More convinced by the 28,000 soldiers.
Okay, so number 3.
Yeah, you wrote.
Is real.
Mexico, they gave us 28,000 soldiers. Everybody said, oh, you didn't get money for the wall. I said, yes, I did. No, you didn't get money for... I said, no, we built the wall. We built almost 500 miles. We got money. What do you mean we didn't get money? They gave us 28,000 soldiers free of charge. 28,000! That's more than giving us a couple of bucks for a wall. They guarded our border for a long time, 28,000.
But it's just, what is he saying there? Because they go, you didn't get money. I said, yes, we did. No, you didn't.
No, he didn't get it. He's saying he didn't get money, but he's claiming that people are worth money. So, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Mexico
they gave us the soldiers.
Gave them soldiers. I mean, they didn't.
Is that true? No. No, I was going to say, it's quite a good argument. If they had, they go, oh, yeah. But then, so he didn't build 500 miles.
No.
Didn't do any of that.
No.
Didn't get the money. What do you mean? They gave us money, and then he says they gave us soldiers. That's more than giving us a couple of bucks for a wall. But they didn't even get a couple of bucks.
No, so billions, the little bit of wall he did cost. And Mexico, apparently in reply to his threats to tariff the fuck out of their cars, essentially, they put, I think it was 11,000 troops near the US-Mexico border to kind of discourage people crossing. Don't know what effect it had. And around 6,000 on their southern border to prevent people coming in from Guatemala. I mean, is that giving America 28,000 soldiers?
It's
numerically, it definitely isn't.
Isn't?
I don't think it's giving them soldiers. They had some additional security
free of charge.
On the border for a while.
So of that entire statement, Mexico is the only true word in there.
Yeah, it was definitely Mexico.
So Mexico. Yeah. There is such a place called Mexico. That's it. Mexico exists.
Yes.
So it's just saying Mexico.
It's a good start. Started strong, went downhill
from there. Yeah. Made up some numbers, shoved them in several times, tried to use it as a reason to justify that as money, tried to monetize that. What is he doing there even?
Yeah. For some reason, he's countering people saying you didn't get money for the wall when no one there is doing it.
No, because everybody there is utterly convinced. They're all convinced. Yeah, you built a wall across there. You could look down there. You can't even see Mexico.
Yeah,
because the wall is so huge.
Just don't bring up the fact that you claimed Mexico would pay for it and then they didn't.
Yeah, because nobody's exactly. Nobody's saying, "Oh yeah, did you?" No, nobody's even interested. They're just thinking this guy is a criminal.
Yeah,
yeah.
So,
okay,
you also think number 2 is real?
Yes.
And number 2,
yes,
is
real.
Every poll,
no,
we're kicking Biden's ass, and that's the problem. That's the problem. And if I wasn't, we wouldn't be under investigation by deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged human being. You take a look at that face, you say, that guy is a sick man. There's something wrong with him. Somebody said, why don't you be nice to him? I said, wouldn't matter. Wouldn't matter. This guy's a maniac.
So he actually does say maniac.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Wow, and he's really angry about the if I wasn't, we wouldn't be under investigation. It's because of all your
also we're not under
previous
investigation.
multiple crimes. Yeah, it's you criminal. Yeah. Yes. I was going to say that here he is. He's doing a bit of nutpicking there. Saying, everybody
I'm just
is,
like all of us. We're all under investigation.
We're all under investigation for horrible crimes against democracy and the United States and people's rights. Yeah, all of us. All of us. And they just, it's a horrifying cheer, isn't it? In every poll, we're kicking Biden's ass.
I mean, does it even need saying? He's absolutely not.
No.
And why would he be? He never polled above 50% while he was president.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, even when he was doing the job.
Yeah.
Yes. People thought other people that weren't doing the job were doing a better job than him.
Yeah. So, no, of course he isn't.
No.
I mean, he can find polls. You can nutpick polls which show him potentially winning against a kind of any generic Democrat candidate rather than specifically Biden. Probably ones that have him beating Biden. But no, the reliable polls where they actually ask humans, they
and a number of humans,
a larger number,
reasonable questions.
They say no. Of course, we don't want Trump again. He's mad.
Yeah.
That means you've won this week.
Hey.
So we wouldn't want to characterise this as typical, obviously.
No.
That would be unfair.
Yeah. No, we can't nutpick this one because
it's a bit of an outlier.
It's an outlier. No, we can't characterise every single game as you're on a winning streak.
Yeah.
And everybody that agrees with me are all winners. No, can't do that because that's far too kind.
Well, unfortunately, our listeners as a whole, as a collective, have all lost this time because
you see, I'm torn now. I'm torn now between going, no, it's really bad, and no. I don't know why. That's just evil and horrible. And
it is a bit. I'm surprised at you.
So cut that bit out.
So Christine in the Facebook group thought it might be number 2, but really wanted number 3 to be true. So got that wish.
Good.
That's good. And Stephen in Patreon, he thought it might be number 3, but acknowledged that there was a tough one this week. So,
you see, because I think the tell, because we've watched Casino Royale a lot recently. I think the tell for me was the Greedy and Corrupt and Conspiracy.
Right.
It was kind of too much stuff. And actually the 28,000, because now you're going to do it. Dick said, really? Every time when I point out, it's like machine learning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, let's just hope we've drunk enough beer so you won't remember.
Oh, that'll probably be fine, yeah. So just got a couple of last-minute entries in as well, actually. Scott in the Facebook group says number 2 as well. And Invisible Unicorn in Patreon thinks number 3. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it says 1 and 2 are just so believable, which makes me think you made up one of them. But I'll go with number 3.
Yeah. No, I know yep, I share your pain. Absolutely, every bloody week. Yeah. So no, it was 28,000. It's a very specific made up number. See, next time we do it, there'll be a specific made up number peppered all over.
Not next time. When you least expect it.
Yes, yes, of course. God damn it.
So yeah, if you'd like to play along and in real time and potentially have your success or failure read out on the air, then make sure that you just have our Patreon and our Facebook group open at all times in case we record.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
it's the only real solution.
Yeah. It's the only solution to do it. Yeah.
Have you ever felt the pull of mystery? Introducing Seeker's Notes, a classic hidden object game. Seeker's Notes isn't just another game. It's a premium hobby with no ads, no Wi-Fi needed, and it's completely free. Over 40 million fans have already been captivated by its charm. So why not come see what it's all about? Download Seeker's Notes now for free and see for yourself.
So it's time for the part of the show that this week at least is called Indictments Are Still Not a Logical Fallacy, because there've been a couple more. I mean, there's been one more proper one, which was DC, the grand jury indictment. That we waited because there was a target letter we talked about last time. And so this is the indictment that followed up on that. But as a surprise, like an extra little amuse-bouche for that one.
Surprise!
There was a superseding indictment in the Florida documents case. That added a few new charges and also a new defendant in that case, Carlos de Oliveira. We talked about him before, but we didn't give his name.
Yes, he was the guy...
He was previously unnamed.
Charged with... No, that's an interesting use of it. Charged with moving the boxes around.
Yeah, he helped Walt now to move the boxes around, and he was also the one who they sent to ask the IT guy all about the security footage and how long it's kept and what you need to do if you want to delete some, maybe, hypothetically.
How would you get rid of that then?
Which, based on some things I've read, might mean he was also the guy who flooded the server room by emptying the pool, but I don't know if that's true or not.
It's the equivalent of an insurance fire, isn't it? Yeah.
So, but the new charges, essentially, are for obstruction of justice, which was related to trying to delete the security footage. They didn't succeed in doing that because an unnamed Trump employee, called employee number 4 in the indictment, basically said, first of all, I don't have the authority to do that. Also, I'm not sure that's allowed to do that. So they didn't actually delete the footage. And the other charge is another willful retention of national defense information charge, which is specifically for that Iran military plans document that we heard Trump waving around and saying, look at this, it's secret, look at it. So they're saying that's clearly a classified document, he clearly had it, so we're charging him with having a classified document and not getting it back. Because this was after it might have been the same day, in fact, that they said to the archives that they'd given everything back already. So those were the ones in the superseding indictment, and that adds those charges to the Florida case.
So does it just make it more official, the superseding indictment?
Well, he hadn't in the previous indictment been charged with the Iran document.
Okay,
and they hadn't charged the obstruction of justice for the video surveillance. There'd been other obstruction of justice that he'd done that they'd previously charged. It's not clear exactly why these weren't charged in the first indictment. The most plausible argument I've heard is that there was a witness that they were trying to flip.
Right.
It might have been de Oliveira
himself.
Who they thought, okay, we're talking to a person and trying to get evidence from them, and therefore, if either when those talks broke down or he decided to not cooperate or whatever, then they said, okay, well, we're going to charge you for these things then.
Yeah.
Or it may be that they were working with a cooperating witness who gave them this information, which enabled them to charge these after their initial indictment that they handed down.
Yeah.
So just adds a few more charges and that extra defendant onto the case, really.
Yep.
But the newest indictment, the newest full indictment, is the one in DC, which is the January 6th case. We talked essentially about all of the charges when we talked about the target letter, because these are the ones about conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede the January 6th congressional proceeding, and that Ku Klux Klan charge, the conspiracy against the right to vote. Stopping people from being able to exercise their right to vote and expect to have those votes counted fairly.
Yeah.
And so those are the charges that have come up, the ones that people had said they had seen in the target letter. Essentially, the three main things that indictment then goes into detail on and around those are Trump's efforts to convince secretaries of state to essentially lie about what the election results are, like his call with Raffensperger.
Yeah.
Trump's efforts and his lawyers' efforts to get slates of false electors in various states to claim that Trump won, and then submit those certified or signed claims that they were certified results to the archives and to Pence to get him to agree to do it. And that last one is trying to get Pence to reject the official slates of electors and accept the false ones, or to send them back to the states and essentially delay it past January 6th. What a lot of the response to this has been from the right, because they need to desperately respond to it in some way, has been to say they are criminalising people questioning the election. You know, they're saying it's freedom of speech thing. Trump has the right to say whatever he wants, and they are trying to put him in prison for saying that the election was stolen.
Right.
Which
they're
well,
not.
It suggests that they haven't read it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't surprise me at all, or even slightly, because paragraph 3 on page 2 says, the defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election, and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote in states or filing lawsuits challenging ballots and procedures. Indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the election results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recounts, audits, or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. So, right at the very beginning of the indictment, Jack Smith is saying he absolutely had the right to say
this stuff.
It was rigged, I won, I should have all the votes, this is completely unfair, you're being lied to, all of this stuff. Yes, he absolutely had the right to do all that stuff.
Of course you can.
Where it became illegal was where he conspired with other people to try and actually change the outcome.
Yes, and obstruct the
actual
outcome from being announced or being ratified or whatever. Yeah. So yes, you can say what you like, mate, and we're not going to try and stop you doing that.
Yeah.
And you can pursue that through the courts and stuff. And with a side note, that you've all of those failed. But what you can't do is do those things that are set out in law, which is to obstruct the actual result from being announced or
try to overturn it.
It, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there are 6 co-conspirators who are listed in a special section called the defendants' co-conspirators.
Yeah.
And they have not as yet been charged, but there is some evidence to suggest that as further evidence is gathered, as more things come out, that perhaps some of them will be charged. Perhaps they are people who might be able to cooperate as witnesses, and if not, they might be charged or something like that. But at the moment, they're just listed as co-conspirators 1 through 6.
Right.
But they are described in such a way as to make 5 of them very easy to identify.
Yeah. We were saying before we came on air that Jim can't even remember who the Deputy Prime Minister in the UK is, but can identify all of the co-conspirators just from their description.
Yeah, I mean that's not even the difficult bit. The thing that stood out to me when I was reading it was that all of the names, basically pretty much all of the names, are redacted and just kind of use descriptions instead. And so when it's talking about the call with Brad Raffensperger, they refer to his lawyer, the Secretary of State for Georgia's lawyer, as counsel of Secretary of State for Georgia. And in my head I was like, oh yeah, Ryan Germany, yeah. It's like, that's weird that I know that.
Yeah. Not like we haven't studied this for 5 years. Yeah.
So, co-conspirator 1 is described as an attorney who was willing to spread knowingly false claims and pursue strategies that the defendant's 2020 re-election campaign attorneys would not. That's Rudy Giuliani.
Nice. Yeah.
Co-conspirator 2 is an attorney who devised...
Is he still an attorney?
Well, he's been disbarred.
He'd been struck off now.
But he was an attorney at the time when these crimes happened,
Yeah.
Co-conspirator 2 is an attorney who devised and attempted to implement a strategy to leverage the Vice President's ceremonial role overseeing the certification proceeding to obstruct the certification of the presidential election. That's John Eastman. He came up with the get Pence to stop doing it plan.
Yeah.
And was in a meeting which Pence apparently took contemporaneous notes of, and has given those notes to Jack Smith.
Lovely.
And then one of Trump's lawyers went on, I think, one of the Sunday shows. He went on all the Sunday shows this week, but one of the shows that he was on, he admitted to the stuff that is said in this on page 35 about that meeting between Trump, Pence, and Eastman, where Trump and Eastman is trying to get Pence to agree to not count these the official slates of electors.
Yeah.
And the lawyer on telly described what Trump said about it and said that he was like, well, my preference is that we should just send them back to the States, and so you should do that. And that's essentially what's being alleged in the case.
Yeah.
And I mean, people who are representing people in an ongoing lawsuit or criminal case certainly typically don't go on telly and admit to the things that have happened, that have been alleged in the case. That's generally seen as a negative.
Yeah. That's kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
It's sort of discouraged. Yeah.
Co-conspirator 3 is described as an attorney whose unfounded claims of election fraud the defendant privately acknowledged to others sounded crazy. Nonetheless, the defendant embraced and publicly amplified co-conspirator 3's disinformation. That's Sidney Powell.
Yeah.
Co-conspirator 4 is a Justice Department official who worked on civil matters and who, with the defendant, attempted to use the Justice Department to open sham election crime investigations and influence state legislatures with knowingly false claims of election fraud. That's Jeffrey Clark.
Yep.
And then co-conspirator 5 is an attorney who assisted in devising and attempting to implement a plan to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors to obstruct the certification proceeding. That's Ken Cheesebro, who we talked about before when the fake electors scheme first came to light.
Yeah.
And co-conspirator 6 is described as a political consultant who helped implement a plan to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors to obstruct the certification proceeding. That, we aren't sure who that is, but it's probably Boris Epstein. That fits. But the others are clear. The others are, that's essentially
what they did. That's who they are.
All of the news that has come out has been, this is what these people did. So it's clear that that's who they're talking about. And all those people are potentially, I mean, they are unindicted co-conspirators at this point. They are indictable. If it is shown that the things that they did, they took steps towards achieving the goals of the conspiracy.
Also, the kind of main thrust of, which kind of gives me some grounds for worry, is that Jack Smith is leaning on that Trump knew that the election was lost and deliberately sustained the falsehood that it was won by him and it was fraudulently won, and so that my worry is based on the fact that they're gonna Trump's lawyers, the defendant's lawyers, could make it difficult so Jack Smith's got to prove that.
Alina Harbour has already claimed that it's fine because Trump believed he had won the election, so everything he did was all right. But essentially that's like saying, well, I genuinely believe that I have £100,000 in my bank account. Mm-hmm. Just because the bank says I don't, that I should be allowed to go into the bank with a gun and demand that to withdraw that amount of money from my account because I genuinely believe I have that amount of money. No, absolutely not. I mean, yes, Jack Smith does. I wouldn't say he relies on it, but he goes into some level of detail to show repeatedly that Trump did know all this stuff was a lie. And that's the scienter, his knowledge, his legal knowledge that he was doing the wrong thing. Some of the charges could be influenced on whether he knew he was doing something wrong, but not all of them. And also, he clearly knew he was doing something wrong. There's also a thing called willful ignorance, which means that essentially, if everyone's telling you it's wrong and against the law, which again, Smith goes into some detail on saying here's
lots of people doing
at this
that.
Point, these people told him this was a lie.
Yeah.
At this point, these people told him this was a lie. And these are people who he trusts and does, agrees with them when they say other things. And they're still all telling him it's a lie at all these various points. With times and dates in some cases. And so, if he is told by so many people that he should rely on, that he has relied on in the past for other stuff, that it's a lie, and he continues to claim to believe that doesn't hold legal water.
Right.
That's him being willfully ignorant in order to get out of being held accountable.
When I studied philosophy at university, there was one of the things was about how do you know things? What's the difference between knowledge and belief? And knowledge included belief. The definition of knowledge was it was justified true belief. So there was some objectivity to the truth of it. It related to something that was existed in the world outside of your particular belief about the existence of something in the world, and that the truth of that was justified by the fact that it did exist outside the world, plus it needed to include your belief of it. So there were three things. So just belief on its own isn't knowledge. So you can't maintain that you didn't know.
Yeah, pages 7 to 9 of the indictment list a number of times when people that it says people who relied on for candid advice on important matters and who were best positioned to know the facts told him the things he was relying on were lies, including Mike Pence, the DOJ, the Director of National Intelligence, Department of Homeland Security, the White House senior counsel, senior staffers on his campaign, state legislators and officials, state and federal courts, the Georgia Secretary of State, the defendant's acting Attorney General and acting Deputy Attorney General, Nevada Secretary of State, the Arizona Secretary of State, the defendant's own campaign manager, and on and on and on, listing specific times when he said a thing that was false and they said that's not true. And explained to him at times in detail why it wasn't true and what the real facts were. So, yeah. I mean, I don't think a jury is going to find him just saying, "Well, I still believed it," very credible.
Yeah. Yes, because they're going to think against all odds, you still believe it. Then you're clearly deranged. You're a maniac. By what criteria do you judge reality?
Well, I mean, that's an excellent question for Trump in general. The thing is that some of what's already happened, because this case is in front of a judge called Tanya Chutkan, who is not sympathetic to Trump. She is not an Eileen Cannon. She takes no shit. And has already started taking no shit. Because he After the arraignment, he put a thing on his Truth Social that said something like, anyone who comes after me, I'll come after you, or something like that. Yeah, and so the prosecution, Jack Smith and his team, went to the court and said, look, I mean, apart from the fact this is a clear threat, we would like a protection order because we are about to give Trump and his team lots of discovery, lots of evidence.
Yeah, yeah.
And what we don't want is for him to use that. Yeah, well, first of all that, but also we don't want to use him to use that evidence to figure out who people are that have information on him and then to attack them.
Yeah.
So we have to have some kind of order on him of how he should behave. And so the judge gave Trump and his team until Monday morning, I think, the essentially right to reply on that, to say, argue with me why you shouldn't have this protection order. In fact, I think what she said was that he should provide an edited version of the prosecution's request for a protection order. So essentially she's kind of saying, I'm going to grant it, but if you want to water it down a bit, let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
So they asked for an extension on that so that they could have more time, partly I think because his lawyer was busy on all the Sunday shows defending him. Yeah. And she said, no, do it by Monday. And he has today responded on Truth Social. He is in all caps, as usual, as he always seems to do these days. He says, there is no way I can get a fair trial with the judge, in quotes, assigned to the ridiculous freedom of speech / fair elections case. Everybody knows this, and so does she. We will be immediately asking for recusal of this judge on very powerful grounds, and likewise for venue change out of DC. Actually, it says out if DC, but I think he meant out of. So, I mean, they're going to ask for recusal based on the fact that she isn't a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
That's the very powerful grounds, because he doesn't have any other grounds to argue that she shouldn't be...
Because don't you just get randomly assigned?
Yeah. Yeah, you get randomly assigned to someone on that court, roster. Essentially, in that district or whatever. Yeah, so that's how he got Eileen Cannon. He lucked out with her. But with this woman... He did not.
Yeah.
And it's not going to go as much his way. I am absolutely not suggesting she will be in any way unfair to him. She will be, from everything I've heard, and people have spoken who have heard cases in front of her or have worked alongside her when she was a lawyer and said she is absolutely fair and honest and will be straight down the line, play everything by the book. There's not going to be any fear or favour in this case. And... yeah, he doesn't like that.
No.
He also doesn't like that it's in DC, because DC is pretty liberal and is saying that there's no way he can possibly get a fair trial. And his lawyer said they want to try and get a venue changed to West Virginia because it's more diverse, which is an interesting way of describing West Virginia, which is 93% white, compared to DC, which is, if anything, very diverse. Perhaps not politically, but... certainly racially diverse.
I think diversity of thought. It's back to Matt Hancock's diversity of thought, isn't it? Yeah. Insofar as there are more Trump supporters, possibly, there are people that he thinks are going to support him.
I mean, they've got absolutely no chance of there being a venue change at all. There's no reason for it, and it all happened in DC.
Well, yeah. So why wouldn't it be tried there?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But what amazes me is that actually what this incredibly detailed indictment does is turn that really engaging TV series that we watch into words, and you kind of look at all this stuff and think, oh my God, it's awful. What? And then it's been noted down to the minute that people were asked by Trump to do stuff, and there's just no room for him. It's like watching Boris in the special committee or the select committee trying to make finer and finer definitions of the things that he said, in between the words, trying to do, and Trump's trying to do that, in a less trained in the classics kind of way. But it's ultimately, there is no room for manoeuvre. He's got no room for manoeuvre. It's all bluster. All he can do is shout, which is what ended up with Boris talking about kangaroo courts, blah, blah, blah. And that's all Trump is doing. And it's very gratifying to see that the system that both Boris and Trump played for so long has caught up with them. And finally, some things we really don't have time to talk about.
Back when Trump got impeached for withholding military aid to Ukraine on the condition of his political opponent Joe Biden being investigated for random made-up crimes, GOP Senator Susan Collins voted to acquit Trump and said she believed Trump had learned a pretty big lesson. I'll bet Senator Collins is feeling pretty embarrassed now, after Trump last week called for Republicans in Congress to withhold all future military aid to Ukraine until the FBI, DOJ and IRS hand over every scrap of evidence they have on the Biden crime family's corrupt business dealings. Because Trump has never learned anything, and damn it, he's not about to start now. The congressional investigation into the Biden crime family has been a shit show since it began in May, with no evidence presented of any wrongdoing whatsoever, with committee chairman James Comer initially claiming he had a very credible whistleblower who then mysteriously went missing. And it turned out he went missing because he had skipped bail after being arrested on weapons trafficking charges 4 months after his indictment for acting as an unregistered foreign agent for China. More recently, the committee has heard testimony from Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devon Archer, which had Republicans and right-wing pundits shouting "gotcha" for a few days because Archer's testimony proved that Joe Biden talked to Hunter about business and was therefore completely going to be impeached. Until Archer's testimony was released, and it turned out he explicitly said Joe never talked business with Hunter and that Archer had no knowledge of any wrongdoing at all. Various GOP voices have continued to claim that it's extremely suspicious that Joe picks up the phone when Hunter calls, because none of them have ever experienced parental love before.
Damn it and blast, I knew we shouldn't have laughed at MyPillow, My Arse CEO Mike Lindell last episode, having to auction off his manufacturing equipment because no one was stocking his actual manufactured product, as he continues to push the notion of his election being stolen from Trump. By the way, what are you doing it for, Mikey? Trump's not going to thank you or be affected financially by your loyalty, and Biden's not dying from the poison you're swallowing. We shouldn't have just laughed. We should have gone online and secured a pallet of non-latex face masks for $8, or a complete electric-powered 35-foot belt conveyor, or even bigger 86-foot one for $6. And a desk to watch it from for $6 while sitting on a set of chairs that gained not a single bid. Okay, admittedly for us, there might have been quite pricey shipping costs, but it would have been so worth it, especially if he signed it, just to laugh every time his fatuous name flopped round every 86 feet. We could have used the remaining 85 feet and 11 inches to write out all the zeros in the 1.3 billion Dominion are suing him for as well, making long Kenneth Williams style ooh sounds as they fly by.
Go woke, go broke is the oft-quoted refrain from people who can't define woke any more than they can critical race theory. And no, this is not a gloating story about Barbie, which has now made over $1 billion at the box office and, more importantly, proved Ben Shapiro wrong, as if proof were needed. No, this story is about Texas A&M University, who back in June hired Kathleen McElroy in their Department of Communication and Journalism. McElroy is a black journalist who studied at Texas A&M herself, is a former editor of the New York Times, and oversaw the journalism school at the University of Texas in Austin. On top of those very clear qualifications, she has a reputation for promoting diversity in the workplace, which sounds like a plus. But this is Texas, so that's the kind of thing that can get you shit-canned, especially this coming January, when the state's new law comes into effect, which effectively bans the discussion of diversity, equity and inclusion on Texas campuses. As a result, some racist cowards who prefer to remain anonymous pushed back against McElroy's new job, resulting in the university president resigning and A&M settling with McElroy to the tune of $1 million, rather than hiring her anyway and telling the racists to fuck off.
Bloody hell. As well as missing our chance to buy old sleep goods manufacturing plant, the fact that just about anyone can create a federal political committee and generate an official public organisational document that appears on the Federal Election Committee's website, fec.gov, also passed us by this week at Fallacious Towers. following the New York Times reporting on Sunday that Trump was creating a legal defense fund to cover the bills of witnesses and defendants. A person or people filed on Monday separate paperwork with the Federal Election Commission to create the Donald Trump Legal Defense Fund. Now I know why that passed us by, because morals. Because unless Donald Trump's legal defense fund is being run out of an apartment in Wheaton, Illinois, and its email address carries the extension opaque.com, scammers are on the hunt to punk loyal supporters of the former president. And you just know Trump's going to hate that, because that's what he does. The FEC has sent a letter to the Donald Trump Legal Defense Fund's treasurer saying, knowingly and willingly making any materially false, fictitious or fraudulent statement or representation to a federal government agency, including the Federal Election Commission, is punishable under the provision of law. But in true Trump supporter / scammer style, they know that the system is always playing catch-up, because it'll take weeks to administratively terminate fraudulent committees that violate regulations in a kind of legal whack-a-mole fashion. Is it me, or do I smell a Jacob Wall-sized scam? Large and ambitious, but doomed to failure and a jail term. Oh, I miss him.
I would have guessed that when you're running for your party's nomination for president, your main opponent being indicted on almost 80 felony charges in 3 states should tip things at least a little bit in your favour. But it turns out that when you're an unpleasant, ineffectual, amateurish charisma vacuum like Ron DeSantis, you still can't manage to creep above 17% in the polls. Cutting a third of his campaign staff feels like it's not going to help, even when one of them is the Nazi who created a video with a Nazi symbol for your campaign and then lying about it. But maybe money is getting tight, because donors also seem to be fleeing the sinking ship. His largest donor by an order of magnitude, hotel entrepreneur Robert Bigelow, has already given $20 million to the pro-DeSantis PAC Never Back Down, but has now decided to back down until Ron is able to raise more on his own. Perhaps he'll be able to gin up some support following his appearance this month in the first Republican primary debate, where he'll be the big fish on a small stage with a bunch of candidates who are struggling to poll above 3%. That is, of course, presuming Trump keeps his promise not to show up. As we all know, Trump shies away from publicity and is always keen for the spotlight to fall on others, so I'm sure he'll do the smart thing and stay away.
Yeah, he's going to do the whole of it in from an orange jumpsuit anyway. Republican presidential candidate and fly landing strip hairstyle wearer Mike Pence weirdly seemed to attempt to court the favour of a dozen or so supporters of another recently indicted Republican candidate, his ex-running mate, one Donald J. Trump. Having been faced with shouts of "hang Mike Pence" early one January a few years ago, flags with "Pence is a traitor" and calls of "why'd you let the people down" by residents at a Londonderry, New Hampshire town hall meeting seemed not to faze him. Instead, he seemingly embraced the violent, subversive, mistaken, anti-democratic, self-styled idiot patriots who rampaged, pillaged and killed at Capitol Hill that January in 2020 by saying, "I'll tell you, there's a lot of passion out there, but I reject your suggestion that that passion is translated into the violence and vandalism of that day." Rejecting the possibility of future violence whilst reminding the above idiots that he didn't have the authority that day to overturn the democratically run fucking election just because it didn't go the way the check-shirted, gun-toting neckbeards wanted, and that's just the women, did seem to show that he'd neither the fortitude nor foresight to play the long constitutional wrecking game the Republican Party requires of their candidates. So yeah, bye-bye, Mikey. It's not been nice knowing you. Now, where's that fly holding his next town hall?
As of yet, Mike Pence hasn't met the fundraising qualification to appear on the GOP primary debate stage, and someone else who won't be there to challenge DeSantis is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because, you silly, he's a Democrat. Yes, I know everything he's ever done, every opinion he's ever expressed, every interview he's given, every person who's endorsed him, and everyone who's even prepared to be in a photo with him just screams Republican. But no, he's definitely a Democrat and not a Steve Bannon-backed chaos agent. Anyway, like all good Democratic candidates, RFK Jr. has a deep understanding of the Constitution, and that's why he's suing YouTube and Google for violating his First Amendment rights. I don't think the suit actually accuses the private companies of doing cancel culture on him, but he did claim during nationally televised testimony to the Weaponisation Subcommittee that he was being censored by big media. So, should he decide to come out as Republican in the future, his bona fides are in place. Of course, the censorship he's talking about is the dangerous medical misinformation he just can't help yelling conspiracy theories about in public, which occasionally get a bit anti-Semitic, as conspiracy theories are wont to do. You would think that being a Harvard-educated lawyer, Kennedy would understand that private companies can't violate your First Amendment rights, but then it's never stopped Ted Cruz from misrepresenting the law either. And it is fully on brand for a Republican presidential candidate. Damn it, Democrat. I keep forgetting for some reason.
For heaven's sake. On this septic isle, Theresa Coffey, the one-woman chimney/distillery and environment minister, said that the Tory party must show that it cared about the environment and insisted that despite the noise over the last week of people coughing while swimming in shit-strewn rivers not being cleaned by unheld-to-account private water companies, and Rishi saying we should max out the oil and gas fields in the North Sea to show just how green we are, the government was still committed to reaching net zero by 2050. Continuing the way that they have, what with Rishi arguing with the radio about flying to Scotland to make that green announcement about granting more licences to fossil fuel companies, and in the process using the nutpicking fallacy.
How are you getting up here to make this green announcement today? Private jet?
I'll be flying as I normally would, and that is the most efficient use of my time. But again, I think actually that question brings to life a great debate here. If you or others think that the answer to climate change is getting people to ban everything that they're doing, to stop people flying, to stop people going on holiday, I mean, I think that's absolutely the wrong approach.
As well as the slippery slope and the straw man, net zero may just be about the number of Tories in power for the next 25 years. Meanwhile, at a by-election in Scotland, because of the recall and removal of the member of the SNP, Margaret Ferrier, after she broke COVID rules, Labour may be grabbing the chance once again to fight amongst themselves. Labour's candidate Michael Shanks has vowed to oppose his own party if it tries to keep the Tory policy of restricting child allowance to 2 children. Officials concede that many voters remain uninspired by Labour. The party's main message in the by-election is likely to be that a Labour win will help force the Tories out of office in Westminster. More of not progressive ordinary workers supporting Labour, but rather simply not Tory. Though Labour's Stephen Kinnock's announcement that if they won in 2024, Labour would have to keep the Tories' controversial offshore barges to house refugees, blurs the line between left and right even further. Sacre bleu. I've only been back in Blighty a day, and I'm already working out how to sneak out with the peloton when the UK leg of the Tour de France returns at Paris.
So that's all the bad arguments and faulty reasoning we have time for this week. You'll find the show notes at fallacioustrump.com, and if you hear Trump say something stupid and want to ask if it's a fallacy, our contact details are on the contact page.
If you think we use a fallacy ourselves, let us know, and if you've had a good time, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, or simply tell one other person in person about how much they like our podcasts. And you can support the show at patreon.com/ftrump, just like our strawman level patrons Laura Thompson, Renee Zed, Schmutz, Mark Reicke and Amber R. Buchanan, who told us when we met her at QED we could just call her Amber, and our true Scotsman level patrons Stephen Bickle, Janet Nuetta, Kaz Tui, Andrew Houck, and our top patron Lauren. Thank you so much for your contingent support, everyone. It's very much appreciated indeed.
You can connect with those awesome people as well as us and other listeners in the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/FallaciousTrump.
All music is by The Outbursts and was used with permission. So until next time on Fallacious Trump, we'll leave the last word to the Donald.
That's right. Go home to mommy. Bye. Bye.